Antonio, is there a market for eggs? Is there a market for meat? I'm interested in venturing into this business, but my worry is there a market that I can sell these products? That's why we are doing this episode today, and that has been the most frequently asked question in our previous episodes. My names are Antonio Innocent Mdongi, your poultry plug. If you're new to our YouTube channel, guys, kindly hit the subscribe button, like, and share as much as you can. Remember, I got you covered. We done a masterclass on feed formulation, layer chick management, broiler chick management, even dairy, and even simple structure construction. So check on our website. I've just dropped a link in the description below, and I'm sure you'll have something to take home. Now, this business is one interesting one, or rather, let me just call it business, or this farming enterprise is one interesting one. Now, when you analyze the market, you look at it from two perspectives. Like from one perspective, a layer chicken farmer, and the other perspective, a broiler chicken farmer. Let us discuss first the market for eggs. Now, when you start producing eggs, you have to do a market survey and see first where you are. Is there a market for these eggs? But the good news is, a couple of years ago, like 2 years before, we had lots of flooding of eggs as imports. But now our country in Kenya, the government put a restriction on imports of eggs. So that reduction on importation of eggs, like table eggs, already created a demand. That's why you see eggs skyrocketed from 280 shillings a crate to 380, and even some markets, you'll get the market at 420 shillings per tray. So the market is there, but you need to position yourself in a way that start with the market, handle that small market niche that is available, then do production as per what your market wants. You get it? I mean, I can go to my local market, check the available retailers, and ask, how many trays do you consume a day? This much. How many trays do you consume a day? This much. Are you willing me to supply you with eggs? Of course, these retailers have got their existing suppliers. They will tell you first their experience. Oh, we are getting eggs, but the supplier is not consistent. Our demand is 3 trays a day, but my supplier is giving us 1 or 2. Or we are sufficient. That should not limit you. The beauty about the egg market is the market is wide, and the industry has got a lower risk compared to the other one for meat. Why? It does not mean that if you lack a market for eggs in your local village or your local town, you should not produce eggs. Proceed to the next town. Eggs are going as far as Mombasa. Actually, Mombasa is the main market for consumption of Kenyan eggs. Today, create a post on Facebook, or post on any social media account that you have eggs you're selling, and be genuine and see how many phone calls you receive. I got people calling me as far as Eastleigh, Kenya, Nairobi, requesting for a supply of over 400 trays, 500 trays a day. And then you're wondering if there's a market. But as much as there's a market, you should position yourself in a way that you can compete favorably with those existing farmers or those existing suppliers of eggs. The only way you can compete is price-wise. Okay? And when you say you want to compete price-wise, you can win a market as near as next to your door, simply because you'll be selling at a shilling less than the other producers. But how can you then sell an egg at a shilling less? Because you could incur losses. The only way you could do that is then go back to your production costs and go slightly lower than the cost they're using to produce. So the good thing about eggs, there is no value addition. There are so many bakeries. They will buy first grade eggs. They will buy cracked eggs, mostly for consumption in the confectionery industry, bakeries. And the good thing about the egg industry, January, February, March, April, May, June, and July, the demand of eggs is at its peak, at its fair peak. So you should position yourself in a way that during these such times of the month, you are then in maximum production. In a nutshell, the market for eggs is there. It is just a matter of you producing, where you are producing from, and how much you are producing with, and what you are producing. Of course, if you are entering the market as a first timer, that is to mean your birds are laying eggs in their first phase, like it's when they're just starting to drop their first eggs. Those eggs will be a little bit smaller in size than those ones already in the market. So don't have these eggs being produced in the first 2-3 weeks, then you take them to the market and you expect to sell these eggs at the same price with those eggs that are being supplied by others who have mature birds. Of course, their eggs are bigger, so they will be bought faster. So these are factors that you also consider. The market is there, but what am I taking to the market? So as you sit behind there doing your math at your desk, you should come to terms with the reality that the market is there, yes, but for me to compete favorably, what is my cost of production and what am I producing? Wow, interesting. Broilers. I'm producing meat. For meat, there is both the local market and there's the export market. And mostly in the broiler industry, there is this thing of contract farming. Contract farming. I'm not so much for contract farming, but for those ones who are lucky to be in contract farming, you have really to do your math well. Because in contract farming, a small blunder, will lead you into losses and even shut down. That's why I don't talk much about contract farming. Let's talk about the normal broiler farmer, or the small to mid-scale broiler farmer. The farmer who is doing 300 birds, 400 birds. The broiler production industry is very interesting. Once you get hold of a market, you have to sustain it. Okay? Broilers are not like layers. Because in layers, once I establish a market, I'll take eggs today, I'll take eggs tomorrow, I'll take eggs the other day. But for broilers, the East African market will mostly want to consume eggs that are fresh. Meat that is fresh, except South Sudan and DRC Congo. That's why we have imports of frozen meat. So you ask yourself, if I stay with this bird an extra day on the farm, it is going to consume more. My market wants me to supply 50 pieces each day. So how am I going to be in a position of supplying 50 pieces each day than not freezing the birds? Because once I go into freezing again, I'm incurring an extra cost. Packaging, wrapping, freezing, such things. When you take the frozen birds to the market, they will tell you these birds weigh more because of what and all that. They want fresh birds. So that one now is a challenge, and it makes the broiler farmer to position himself in a way that if your market dictates that you should supply a number of, let's use 50 birds a day. If I'm supposed to supply 50 birds a day, I should position myself in a way that in a week we have 7 days. 7 days times 50 birds, it is 350 birds. Then I break down this into two. I bring in every week. At the start of the week, I bring half of 350 birds. Then midweek, I bring the other half. Every other week. The beauty about it is, once I get hold of the market, if I'm able to supply my 350 birds this week, I'll have still the same market to supply the 350 birds next week. And so, in broiler business, it's only that it's a bit laborious in terms of brooding. Each other week for a broiler farmer is a brooding week, as long as this farmer has got a good, stable market. Now with broilers, there is a tendency or a huge tendency of price fluctuations. Price fluctuations. So broiler, for this farmer who is just producing to sell to any market, like he doesn't or she doesn't have a really established market, you should be so smart and play your cards so well. For example, look at the market with a microscopic eye. When people are going east, you go west. For example, during the festive season, mostly from 20th December all the way to January, most people will travel up country or will travel for vacations abroad. They will not produce meat. That's why from January 2nd all the way to February, the demand for broilers is always on another level. Like literally the demand is so high. So you look at the market and position yourself in a way that you don't go to produce when there are so many farmers already producing. So you should produce when these farmers are off season. Then when the farmers come back, then you don't stop, you simply reduce your production. However, in as much as we say that our market does not want frozen birds, we don't mean that it completely doesn't want frozen birds. So you should also invest in storage facilities, more so for broiler farmers. Now, for the Kenyan improved farmers, their market is there, yes, but it's a seasonal market. Unless this farmer has got a selected, has got an established market, an established niche, whereby he or she will keep supplying birds to that particular hotel or restaurant or that market. But remember, the Kenyan improved birds take a bit longer time to mature. And so it becomes very difficult for you as a farmer to position yourself in a way that these birds will be attaining market at this time, then I can be able to dispose them. Unless a farmer is going to keep red bros and the F1 broilers, then you can comfortably meet that market. Because there is no need of feeding a bird and you don't have a market to sell the produce. It will be feeding your pocket and puncturing it more and more. So the market is there. It is all about you being smart, establishing your market, confirming your market, knowing what you're producing for your market, when, and at how much. I love you so much, guys, and I really hope you've enjoyed this episode, and I won't wait to get more questions. In a nutshell, the market is there. Just produce, but produce averagely. Don't overproduce. Bye-bye.